For the first time in the history of our country, we have a situation where thousands and thousands of voters have made spirited efforts to get their names removed from the voters' register. What? IEBC chairman Wafula Chebukati has confirmed that the commission has received thousands of requests. Now, of course, there's a legal problem here, because the makers of our constitution did not foresee a situation where citizens, the people of Kenya, would want their names removed from a voter's register. Nobody saw that coming, apparently. In my opinion, this is a situation that should cause a lot of concern. Those who rule Kenya, the government, should be very worried. In fact, it should panic that Kenyan voters want their names out of the voter register. Now I can hear somebody telling me, come on, Chris, at a panic. What for? If people want to be removed from the voters register, let them be removed. Kwani iko nini? And of course, that is what I call tortoise thinking. Mafikirio ya mzee Kobe. Okay? Because there are far-reaching consequences. There are far-reaching implications when the citizens of a country in large numbers want their names removed from the voters register rather than added. You have a huge problem. And here's the thing, it's not only those thousands who want their names removed. Actually, there's a huge number of Kenyans. I believe if you did a survey today and asked Kenyans which Kenyans want their names removed, you would get a huge percentage, close to 50% or even more, who would want their names removed. But before we look into why this is such a serious problem for any government, let us try and dig deeper to find out the reasons why some Kenyans want their names removed from the voters register. Now, the most fascinating thing here is that virtually all the people who want their names removed are saying the same thing. In a nutshell, they're saying, I voted in 2017. My vote did not matter. My vote did not register. Then I thought that in 2022, we would have a free and fair election. And therefore, although I was initially reluctant to vote, I decided to vote. But once again, in fact this time it was worse, my vote did not count. That is really what most of them are saying. What do they mean? What do they mean that the vote didn't count? Let me illustrate this by taking you back to the year 2017. And the date was 1st September. The Supreme Court of Kenya, led by patriot, legend, Chief Justice David Maraga, overturned the election of President Uhuru Kenyatta and sent Kenyans back to vote once more. Now, an outsider, a non-Kenyan, observing carefully the celebrations after Uhuru Kenyatta had been announced the winner of the 2017 presidential elections, would have said to themselves, what is wrong with Kenyans? Kwani they never celebrate these things? Kwani Kenyans don't have emotion? A new president is announced and people are just quiet. Well, after the Supreme Court overturned the election of President Uhuru Kenyatta, there were celebrations right across the country. And that told you clearly that the decision of the Supreme Court of Kenya in 2017 was well received, was a popular decision as far as Kenyans were concerned at that time. And what that obviously tells you is that President Uhuru Kenyatta did not win the 2017 presidential elections. People were celebrating the real winner of those elections. Now fast forward to 2022. William Samoei Ruto is announced as the winner of the presidential election. Scores of Kenyans are taken ill. People are hospitalized. Some people even left this earth for good. They passed on. Most Kenyans had extreme stress. Kenyans were in mourning. They still are. The vast majority of Kenyans were doing the opposite of what they did in 2017. What is the opposite of celebrating? And once again I need to ask, what does that tell you about the decision of the Supreme Court, led by Chief Justice Martha Koome in 2022? How was that decision received by Kenyans? Even if you are a UDA diehard and support of the Deputy President, you know the truth in your heart, which is the real winner was locked out by the Supreme Court judgment. You know, I got very shocked recently when somebody told me that they've been in mourning since 2013. Oh yes. They said after the 2013 Supreme Court ruling, which went against Raila Odinga, they were in mourning. They would drive around for hours crying, tears. And then in 2017, it was even worse. Now in 2022, I was shocked. I didn't realize that it goes that far back. And so it is these Kenyans who don't want their names on the voters register. And by the way, that is yet more evidence that the vast majority of voters, something happened to their votes. Because they are the majority, but their candidate did not win. Now don't ask me how that happened. I have no idea. Go and ask Chebukati. Go and ask the Supreme Court of Kenya. I have no idea. It is a great puzzle. Now, the reason why any government should panic is the following. What do you do when people not only don't want to vote in the future, they don't want their names anywhere in that voters register? What is the alternative to electing our leaders? What is the alternative for us to get our leaders if people do not want their names on the voters register? In my opinion, that's a very scary question, because we are supposed to be a democracy. The will of the majority must be respected in a democracy. But what has been happening? 2007, the will of the majority rubbished. You're not important, it doesn't matter. Yes, you voted for this person, but no, that's not the person winning. 2013, the same deal. 2017, the same deal. 2022, in my opinion, it was even worse. And so if one looks at it this way, it is self-explanatory. It is rather obvious why so many Kenyans want their names removed. They don't want to ever vote again in their entire lives. And it is even worse than that. In my opinion, even if you reformed the IEBC today, or even yesterday, most of these Kenyans will still not be interested. You know, the UDA propaganda machine has introduced some very strange things which don't make sense to Kenyans. Like this thing about, oh, you must protect your votes. Now tell me, how do you protect the votes of a candidate? Give me an idea. Okay, in the old days when it was all manual, ballot boxes were transferred from the polling station to be counted at the tallying center, which was usually the headquarters of the constituency, that particular constituency. And so I suppose supporters of a candidate would protect the votes of their candidate by observing the situation carefully at the polling station and then going to the tallying center to ensure that all was well. But even that is not foolproof, because what usually used to happen is that the ballot boxes were switched en route. Somewhere along the way, the vehicle carrying the ballot boxes stopped, and some pop was done. Ballot boxes were switched. Ballot boxes were stuffed with votes, pre-marked votes, etc., etc. So tell me, I need to ask again, how do you protect the votes of your candidate? Give me an idea. What do you do? Another ridiculous thing that has come out of the UDA propaganda machine is the following. Kama uliibiwa, hata wewe iba kura. If your votes were stolen, even you steal votes. Now, how on earth do you do that, even if you wanted to steal votes? You know, some of us, and indeed the vast majority of Kenyans, are not computer gurus. And you know, these days, this thing is done hewani. It is done in the transmission stage, in the air somewhere. Because the way people voted on the ground, by the time those votes arrive through the air, it seems that somewhere up there in the sky, there's some switching that goes on, which Kenyans have no idea. Bottom line, that is the reason why most Kenyans are saying, I don't want to vote, remove my name. Period. Now, naive thinking, tortoise thinking will tell you that this will pass. That by the time the next elections arrive, Kenyans will have forgotten. Kenyans will want to still be in the voters' register. I don't think so. I just don't think so. Because the way Kenyans have been hurting so deeply after the 2022 presidential elections, it will take much more than the passage of 5 short years to heal that and to send somebody back to a polling station to vote. You know, I need to share something. We all know that the voter turnout in these 2022 elections was very low, and people gave the reason of finances, which is true. But are you aware that there's also a significant percentage of Kenyans who did not vote this time round simply because they were worried, they were anxious, and they feared that their vote would not count, even if they took the trouble to vote? And it seems they have been vindicated. So what I'm saying is that already we had a group of Kenyans who in 2022 did not vote because they felt that in Kenya your vote does not count. Yeah, it is all just part of a play, acting, dress rehearsal, but then the final results will be decided somewhere else. And you and I have nothing to do with it, with the voters. And therefore, what that means is that every election cycle will be losing voters, not gaining them. And indeed, we now need to look again at the reasons why the voter registration before the 2022 elections went nowhere near meeting the IEBC targets, which were very modest. But still, the number of Kenyans who registered as new voters was very low. That is a fact. And so if you think that the voters' turnout was very low in 2022, wait until 2027. I don't know what percentage will turn out to vote, but it is bound to be very low. It's bound to break all records, unprecedented, in terms of how low the voter turnout will be. And that can never be good for any democracy. Oh God Almighty, help Kenya. Until next time, this is Chris Kumekucha.